Hello again. So here we are with an air law examination question from student feedback. It was a recent Austro exam in January 2024 here at Bristol Ground School. This question is not brand new. It has been around a little while, around about a year, but it seems to be a very popular one at the moment, and it is quite a tricky one that a lot of people end up struggling with. So let's read through the question itself first. An Airbus 380 is performing a visual approach at Rome, and the aircraft is number 2 behind an Airbus 320. The A380 pilot has reported that he or she has the A320 in sight, and shortly after, ATC gives the A380 pilot clearance to maintain own separation. So in this scenario, which option is correct regarding the wake turbulence separation between the two aircraft? Okay, and then we've got our usual 4 answers, and just making sense of them is quite difficult. We've got the 2 aircraft. So Alpha says ATC is no longer required to apply wake turbulence separation between the two. Bravo says ATC is responsible for separating the A380 from the A320 by applying the appropriate wake turbulence minima. And Charlie says the pilot of the A320 must maintain the wake turbulence separation from the A380. And Delta says ATC must inform the A320 about the wake turbulence category of the A380. Okay. Before we start thinking about those two deeply, again, we have to go back to the basics of the question. What is it all about? Well, it's really about 2 main topics, isn't it? The first one is separation. We identify that because of the phrase maintain own separation. And then also it's about wake turbulence. So we'll look at both of those. The first one then, separation. So if the conditions are acceptable in terms of ceiling and also visibility, then as we know, an IFR flight may be cleared to execute a visual approach. In terms of separation more generally, most of the time it's the responsibility of the appropriate air traffic service unit, isn't it? And it can be basically one of 2 forms. It can be procedural, where they require the aircraft to follow certain procedures, or it can be by them observing the position of the aircraft on radar, and that's known as radar control. But in the right circumstances, the responsibility may be handed over to the aircraft, to the pilot. Okay, so an IFR flight may be cleared to execute a visual approach according to these conditions. So looking over at the image there, the reported ceiling must be above the initial approach level, and also more generally the Met conditions must allow for a visual approach. The separation must be applied between the aircraft cleared to execute the visual approach and any other aircraft arriving and departing. But if the pilot having the preceding aircraft, the aircraft in front, in sight, then he or she shall be instructed to follow and, like it said in the question, maintain own separation. So that's the situation we're in. That's the scenario they're talking about. Okay, so now on to wake turbulence in that situation. So when both aircraft are heavy, the wake turbulence category, or the preceding aircraft is a heavier wake category than the following, and the distance between the aircraft is less than appropriate, the controller shall issue a caution of possible wake turbulence. The PIC of the aircraft concerned shall be responsible for ensuring that spacing from preceding aircraft of a heavier wake turbulence category is acceptable. So following on from that last bullet point there, if the PIC determines that additional spacing is required, then the flight crew should inform ATC accordingly, stating their requirements. But this is not the case in this question, is it? Because here, the preceding aircraft, the one in front, is the A320. And obviously the A320 is of a lighter category. So to summarize then, the pilot of the A380, which of course is heavier than the 320 and following the 320, and has the 320 in sight, that means now that they're responsible for the wake turbulence clearance. So going back to the question now, let's see which answer fits that. So firstly, ATC is no longer required to apply wake turbulence separation between the A320 and the A380. That sounds right, doesn't it? Because we just said it was down to the pilot, because the pilot is maintaining their own separation and the lighter category is in front. But let's look at the other answers just in case. So ATC is responsible for separating the A380 from the A320. No. The pilot of the A320 must maintain the wake turbulence separation from the A380. Well, it's going to be a bit difficult for the aircraft in front to do that anyway, isn't it? And Delta, ATC must inform the A320 about the wake turbulence category of the A380. Against that, that's not relevant, is it? Because the 320 is in front. So the only one that makes sense, having looked at it in terms of separation and wake turbulence, is Alpha. See you at the next one.